right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Newington High School. My name is Tara Tigno, and I call myself the proud principal here at Newington High School, and you'll see why. We have a number of students with us today, 23 to be exact, student leaders. They represent all grades 9 through 12 at the high school. And we are located right now in our event center, which is one of the wings down here at the high school. So I just wanted to introduce my immediate building admin team, and then I'm going to... The beauty of high school, there's still bells. And then I'll turn it over to Dr. Brumman, our superintendent of schools, who will introduce the others that are in the room. So first, I'd like to introduce Mr. Jamie Harris, one of our assistant principals in the McGee House on the first floor. Also with us today is Mr. Mario Ficcicelli, the Doran House principal, and our Stoddard House principal, Mrs. Laura Blanchard. So thank you, admin team, for joining us this morning. Student leaders, I thank you for being part of this as well. And I'd like to turn it over now to Dr. Brumman, our superintendent of schools.
Thank you, Ms. Tigno. Thank you for hosting us today. Welcome, Governor Lamont. It's my pleasure to introduce some of the dignitaries that are in the room that are not necessarily speaking, but we want to recognize them. I have Mike Camillo here from the Town Council, recently re-elected Tuesday. We have Callie Veach and Mercy Hetherington from our health department here, since this is going to be a health-related announcement today. We also have Shelley Davies from the AFT, who's, I believe, showing the union support for this initiative that's going forward today. And I'd also like to welcome or acknowledge Jacob Trowbridge and Craig Holland from our IT department. We are being live streamed. We are ready to go. So we're totally high tech here at Newington High School. So welcome, everybody. It is my pleasure now to introduce DPH Commissioner Manisha Jahani to talk about why we're all here today. Manisha.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm Dr. Manisha Jutani. I'm the new DPH Commissioner. So I came into this role, as all of you have been in this pandemic, as we all have for the last many, many months. I'd like to just say one thing first, which is Happy Diwali. I don't know if anybody knows what that holiday is, but it is a festival of lights. And it is a celebration of good over evil, light over darkness, and it's a great day to make this announcement, I think, for many who may celebrate that holiday, because there's a lot of light that I hope we're bringing into this world. First of all, I just want to reemphasize what we all heard about in the last couple of days, which is that vaccines are available for our 5 to 11-year-olds. And vaccination is going to be the #1 way out of this pandemic. I want to remind everybody of that as we're talking about what we're going to talk about today, which is a new initiative which is going to be available to schools, should they choose to adopt it, called Screen and Stay. And the idea behind Screen and Stay, for all the students in the room, you've probably been familiar with the idea of being masked and being in close contact to somebody that had COVID. And what we have seen around this country is that rates of COVID from in-classroom mass transmission between students or staff are extremely low. And so what we are moving towards is this particular policy, which would be Screen and Stay, which is that you have an opportunity, if you're identified as a contact, to be screened for a number of symptoms, the things that we know COVID can cause. And if you don't have those, you can keep coming to school. The idea here is that we need to keep kids in school. It has been a tough 18 months for people to repeatedly have to quarantine, and we want to be cognizant of the idea that aside from COVID, there are a lot of other things that people who are growing up today are having to face. There are challenges related to your social health, behavioral health, in so many ways, your emotional health, being around your peers, being with your teachers, being in the classroom is exquisitely important to keep your education on track. So the main idea here is try to keep as many kids in school as possible. Masked on masked exposures in the school setting we know to be low risk. We even have data that came out from this summer of schools that did similar things to this, for example, in North Carolina, and had very, very low rates of transmission, even with the Delta variant. It is because of that science. It is because of balancing health effects overall, knowing that being in school is what is most important for our kids, and paying attention to the social, behavioral, and emotional wellness of kids overall, that we are moving forward with this initiative that is going to be optional for schools, optionals for families if they decide that it's good for them, but it's going to be an option to be able to stay in school. With that, I'll turn it over to our other partners.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Giussani. I appreciate that, and I couldn't agree more with Screen and Stay. It's been discussed amongst our CAPS colleagues, Fran Rabinowitz, and as I was at a national conference last week and I was kind of polling my fellow superintendents in North Carolina said they were using it, Arizona said they were using it, and it's going extremely well. They called it a game changer. So now I would like to interview, is Commissioner Russell? She popped in. I would now, and it's my pleasure to introduce our Commissioner of Education, Dr. Charlene Russell Tucker.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all that's here. I want to thank the Governor and Commissioner Giussani and all the DPH and SDE, or agency teams that's worked together to develop this very important initiative that will keep our children and our educators in the classroom. If you've heard me speak, I've talked about this DPH and SDE best-in-class collaboration. We really work very well together, keeping our students and our educators at the center of everything that we do. As a state, we've collectively continued to reinforce throughout the pandemic that access to in-person learning is a priority, particularly due to the significance of the supportive social-emotional environment provided through our student and adult interactions during the day in school, and Commissioner Giussani says it well. Also, as you know, our school assessment data continues to show that students across the board, including those disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, are most engaged and learn best when they are in person with your educators, and I'm sure you can nod to that, and your friends on a daily basis. So in addition to addressing the needs for in-person learning, it ensures that our students also have access to critical services that we know schools provide, from access to support personnel to nutritious meals every day. And so it's important that this program has resulted from input that we've received from our partners here, as you've heard. Screen and Stay brings immediate relief, and I would call it the game changer, as the superintendent just talked about, for the frequent repeated quarantines that impact learning, and it also places a burden on families. So we know that this is important. So I really want to thank our educational partners, our teachers' unions, Superintendent Association, CABE, and CAS. I think we've got all the alphabet letters here, for their feedback as we finalize this program, and our department really looks forward to helping schools implement this. I just want to thank you for that collaboration that we model in this state so very well, putting our students and our educators at the center of everything that we do. Thank you very much, Maureen.
Thank you, Commissioner Russell Tucker. For those that don't know, every Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock sharp, we have fun with Commissioner Russell Tucker and her team to keep up abreast of all of these developments, along with DPH and the CDC representatives. It is now my pleasure to introduce Bob Rader, who represents the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education. Mr. Rader.
Hi. I want to first thank the governor, thank SDE, and especially thank DPH for this new way of making sure kids are in school. For the last year, obviously, we have had these, as the commissioner said, stops and starts. This will make sure more kids are in school, and that's where they've got to be if they're going to learn, if they're going to get prepared for the future, and if they're going to have the socialization and the spending of time with others. It's really important. And I also want to thank the superintendents and the principals and, of course, the school boards for doing everything they can to keep schools open and to make sure things go well. And in line with what the commissioner was talking about, the Tuesday calls, we are going to give an award next week at our convention to DPH as well as SDE, the team that has kept us informed, kept things clear, and really explained to over 600 people a week about what is going on. So with that, I thank you all. We are very glad this is going to happen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rader. And before I introduce our next speaker, I just want to thank all the teachers who may be watching on live stream or in this room, and administrators and health professionals that are working in schools. This has been a crazy couple of years, and they have risen to the occasion and done a fantastic job. And here in Newington, we have worked very closely with our union to make sure we're all on the same page. So I want to make sure we say that we are a part of a CEA union here in Newington. It is now my pleasure to introduce Glenn Longarini, head of the Connecticut Association of Schools, for all of our athletic issues, which is this big deal for athletics in this new initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Lamont, Commissioner Giuffani, Commissioner Russell Tucker. Thank you for your exceptional leadership through these challenging months that we've had in making Connecticut the leader in COVID response and continuing to make Connecticut a leader in education across the country. Connecticut Association of Schools and the CIAC strongly support the action being taken today to keep our kids in school. I think every decision that has been made since the onset of the pandemic around education has been in the best interest of kids, and this continues to put your interest at the forefront and give you the best opportunities and educational experiences possible. I would also like to thank CABES and CAPS, CEA, AFT, and CFSA for their continued partnership and support as well. And along with Commissioner Giuffani's thoughts on the vaccines and how that is going to play in our defense against this, would like to also share with you that at our CIAC State Championships for Soccer, which will be November 20th and 21st at Dillon Stadium, all 8 championships will be there, and through the collaboration with the staff at DPH and Griffin Health, we will be offering a vaccine clinic for anybody eligible at that championship. Students, grades K through 12, who choose to get vaccinated at that state championship will get free admission to the games as well. So thank you, Commissioner, for your support and making that opportunity available for kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Longarini. Excited about the soccer championships. I also want to thank our security team. I don't know if Mike Morgan's in the room or he's out kind of doing periphery, whatever they do, but he's made it very safe. We've got our security team in the room as well, so thank you very much. It is now my pleasure to bring up Kate Diaz from the CEA.
So I think thank you at this point seems like the appropriate thing to say. Seems to be the repetitive sentiment of the moment, but it's genuine. And I'm very grateful as the president of the Connecticut Education Association to have been able to partner and work with all of these wonderful, intellectual, thoughtful, strategic individuals to really put forward a plan that really meets our genuine priority of everyone in school. Like all of our students in the room, I taught during the pandemic. I was in a classroom. I dealt with the disrupted learning. I knew what it was like to deal with students on quarantine, coming back, they coming in and out of the school, and how challenging it was for both the educator and the student. The level of disruption that this allows us to kind of move away from and to really incorporate daily education regularly, predictably, and consistently, I think is invaluable in a way that we probably can't even articulate or probably quantify in ways that it really means so very much to educators and to the students. What we want most of all is to be present. What we want most of all is to interact. And what we want most of all as the adults is to teach. We want to be with you. We want to make sure, I taught statistics, so I don't know if anybody in the room, yeah, see, yeah, okay. And so that was my joy, was to be able to learn with you. Teaching is messy, and it was so hard to do online. Learning is messy, and it's so hard to do online. But we can navigate those messy roads together in a space. And this allows us to do that. So I am so very grateful to our partners. I am grateful for the people who were willing to think creatively when our numbers got good, when the quarantine rates started to kind of be a problem, and we saw vaccinations going up. We were able to learn from other areas. And our ability to modify, adjust, and reflect on our practices is what makes Connecticut special. And it was what will really continue to make us a leader in our pandemic practices. So as we continue to go, this is the beginning, not the end of the work that we get to do together. And so I look forward to what else we're going to be able to do and come back again another time and talk about all the other exciting opportunities we're going to be able to create. So I thank all of our partners. I thank the governor, and I thank you kids for hanging in there with us, because it's been rough, and we really are excited to be with you as much as possible. So thank you, educators, and stay strong.
Thank you very much. And as stated, this initiative has the potential to truly eliminate or drastically reduce all of our students on remote learning. So we couldn't be more thrilled. It is now my pleasure to bring up one of our local state reps, Mr. Gary Turco.
Thank you, Dr. Brummett. I just want to take a moment and speak directly to the students that are in the room. I think there's 23 students, Dr. Brummett, you said? Just about, yes. And are you all seniors? No? You have some? All grades. All grades. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. As your state representative here in Newington, I work for you. You're all my bosses. And all of you students and your parents and your brothers and sisters are the most important to me. They're why I get up every day and work really hard to assist you all. We know, the governor, the legislature, Senator Lesser's here, administrators, your teachers, your principals, we know how difficult it has been for you all the last couple of years. I mean, you have been affected perhaps the most by all of the different changes that have consistently happened. And I know sometimes it may be confusing, and sometimes it may be frustrating. And you've had school plays canceled, and proms, and sports games, and been virtual and in person, and all kinds of confusion in a time in your life that's supposed to be some of the best times and some of the most memorable times. I want you to know that everything we've been doing, the governor, the legislature, all of your teachers, administrators, and everyone you see here has been all about trying to keep you safe, healthy, and have the best education possible. And we will not stop working towards that goal every single day. We will continue to look at policies. We will continue to enact best practices and data to make sure that you are kept healthy, you are kept safe, and you have an outstanding education. So although at times we're not totally out of this pandemic yet, at times there are going to be continuously different changes and decisions, and you might wonder why. Please know, with our incredible governor here, legislature, and staff, we're doing everything we can to help you all. And if you have any questions with all of that, you call me, contact me, and I will do it my best to help you or get you the answers, okay? We're here for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Turco. Appreciate your remarks. It is now my pleasure to introduce one of our state senators, Mr. Matt Lesser.
Thank you, Dr. Brummett. Thank you for all that you have done and continue to do to keep kids safe in this school district. Thank you, Gary Turco, who is really a wonderful partner, and thank you to Governor Lamont. You know, Governor, this is, I think, the second time we've had you down at the Newington schools, and I know that you picked Newington High School because the mascot here, the new mascot, is the Newington Nor'easters, and the only thing that gives a pandemic a run for its money in terms of challenges for a governor just might be a Nor'easter. But in all seriousness, it's great to be here with Dr. Giussani and Dr. Commissioner Russell Tucker and all of the stakeholders who are here to keep our kids safe. And just want to echo what Representative Turco just said. You know, my gratitude for students, for parents, for teachers, for paras, for all of the school staff and public health employees who've been going through this for the last 2 years is really hard to put into words. I can just speak personally about my own experiences as a parent of an unvaccinated kid, of a kid who is too young to receive the vaccine. I know how big of a deal it is that now all school-age children in Connecticut are eligible to receive the vaccine, because when I go out anywhere as the parent, I have to figure out, what do I do about childcare? Can I take my son with me or not? When I went out to this event today, I had to figure out, is it an indoor event or an outdoor event, and arrange childcare. And that is an anxiety that every parent in the state has felt since the onset of the pandemic. And so finding ways, putting science first to keep to keep young people safe in schools, I think is really important. And having that peace of mind that now thanks to the FDA, all school-age children in Connecticut can now safely be vaccinated is going to make a big difference in just reducing the anxiety that's out there. We are not done with the pandemic, but we've gone through an awful lot. And I know that this is a big step forward. So just grateful for the work that Governor Lamont does each and every day, and his team here who are here. And I'm glad we have a new policy that will hopefully make things just a little bit easier for parents, for families, for students, for teachers, for everyone in Connecticut working to get through this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Lesser. And I believe, looking at my list here, I accidentally skipped over a friend and a colleague who is the executive director of CAPS, and I think I am still the secretary of the executive board, but that may be changing after today's meeting. Miss Fran Rabinowitz.
Absolutely no problem. I'm sure you have heard from so many people today, so I'll be really short. First of all, I want to tell you what a pleasure it is to see kids in person. It's wonderful to have you in the room today and to really have you able to enjoy your high school years. I know how important it is for you to be with each other and to be with your teachers. So just want to say thank you for being here, and thank you for doing the work that you did so well during the whole pandemic and the ins and outs. And I also want to say that I'm really proud to be a Connecticut person, because Connecticut has been on the cutting edge for all of you in education from the beginning of this pandemic. Together with the governor, the legislature, and our wonderful commissioners, we have been able to be right on the cutting edge of making sure that you're safe, but also making sure that your needs are met in the best way possible. And I'm thrilled about this Screen and Stay, because it will allow more of you and most of you to be in school each and every day. And you know what else? It's going to help your families. It's really going to help families as well. I have lived through having to take care of my grandchildren because they were quarantined or couldn't go to school when their parents had to go to work. And I know the stress that is. So good for Connecticut. And what I can say to you is enjoy every minute of those high school years. They're wonderful years. And thank you to everyone that made this happen today.
All right, I'm looking at my list one more time. I think I have gotten all of our speakers covered. And I just want to also acknowledge the students that have joined us today. And just so folks in the room know how important student voice is in Newington. And speaking of the holiday Diwali, we recently had a presentation about Diwali at a Board of Education meeting, and we were informed about how important it is. And our Board of Ed student rep, Vidisha Thakar, is here as one of our student voices today, and she also chimed in about what an important holiday that is. So happy Diwali to all of you who celebrate. And now, without further ado, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome the governor back to Newington, Connecticut. Thank you, Governor Lamont.
Hey, thanks, Maureen. It's great to be here. Would anybody else like to speak? If you're feeling left out, we can take some time. But I think Screen and Stay in School is one more signal of success in our battle against COVID. And each of these bits of progress that allow our kids to stay in school, it does take a village, right? That's why we've got the superintendents, and we got the legislatures, and we got the boards of ed, and we've got sports, and we've got teachers and paras, and we've got to do everything we can to bring people along so that people feel they can get back into the classroom safely. And I was pretty forceful, I guess, on opening our schools a year ago, September. I thought we could open our schools. I thought we could open our schools safely. And I think more than just about any state in the region, certainly we're able to do that. Not everybody felt necessarily 100% confident getting back to school, but over time, everybody's come back into the classroom, and what a difference that makes. And unlike some of those southern states where people are going back to school, but I know it's a pain, but they're not wearing masks, and they got lots of quarantine, and they got spreads and people, that's happening a lot less in Connecticut. But it's still happening. Every once in a while, we do have exposures. We're exposed to somebody in the classroom, and there people have to take some time off and quarantine. And that's what this change is all about. This is about screen and stay. You can stay in the classroom. It's an example of the fact that we're successfully wearing the mask. All of you are now eligible to get vaccinated. How many of you have been vaccinated over here? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's progress. I love it. And what this says now is if there's an exposure, in the classroom, we'll notify your parents, we'll notify somebody at home, and then we ask you, look, if you're showing symptoms, if you're showing COVID, flu-like symptoms, runny nose, cough, things like that, don't come into the class because there's a risk that you are exposed and that you could be spreading it. Otherwise, this allows you to stay in the classroom, and what a difference that makes. And by the way, I'll just give you a heads up. Flu has some of the same symptoms as COVID, same coughing. How many of you had the flu shot? Okay, not bad. It's a good reason to do it, though, just so that there's no confusion about what might be happening. But this allows our kids to stay in school. This allows parents and teachers to know that their kids are able to be in school and be in school safely. And it's one more step in terms of progress in our fight against COVID. I'll just say one last thing. I spent a lot of time looking around what's going on with COVID in other parts of the world. There was a real flare-up in Britain, England in particular, southern Britain. A lot of that was related to schools, not vaccinated, of course, but also folks not wearing the mask. Kids brought it back into the home, and there were some issues there. That's not happening in Connecticut. I think we've shown over the last year and a half that working with each and every one of you, we're able to keep our schools open safely, able to do sports safely, and able to make sure that if there is a little exposure, you'll be able to stay in the classroom safely going forward. I'm so glad you're vaccinated because that brings the day where we're totally liberated that much closer. So great to be with you. Thanks, everybody.
I figured the governor would stay up here to answer questions.
No, I'm right, but sent you up there.
Oh boy, no way. I'm gonna turn it right back over to Governor Lamont for all the questions.
When does this take effect? Does it affect immediately? When
Right now.
Right now. Governor, can you come back to the mic, please?
Yes, Mr. Pazniokis.
I have a couple of health-related questions, actually. We know that asymptomatic spread of this virus is a thing. So if someone could speak to, how do we reconcile that public health knowledge with this particular policy?
Thank you, Governor. What special treatment? Governor's picking up my stool for me. Okay, so we know that asymptomatic infection is possible. We know that asymptomatic spread is possible. But in schools, we've got many layered strategies that are going towards mitigation of COVID, right? Vaccination, I'm gonna hound this one again, is our #1 strategy. But we are taking advantage of the fact that we have a mask mandate at the moment. So you take our high vaccination rates, our lower COVID rates right now, they are stable, but we still have COVID in our community. We take advantage of the fact that people are masking, getting vaccinated, still doing other measures in the schools that, particularly in the school, have been very effective and are making a calculated risk based on data that we've seen in other states as well. I gave you the example of North Carolina. The rate of COVID in that sort of setting was in the 2 to 3% range. So again, knowing that we've got all these other things that are going on in kids' lives. I mean, my son was quarantined from an exposure during COVID and was, out during February break, and he didn't get COVID from that in-classroom exposure when people were masked with each other. That was pre-vaccination, right? And now so many people are vaccinated. Again, the number one way to not get quarantined is if you're vaccinated. So this is a measure to be able to bridge, particularly in these next couple months, where every school-age child is now eligible for a vaccine. But we know that that's not going to happen immediately. Even if you get vaccinated today as a young child, it's going to be 5 weeks before you're fully vaccinated. So the goal here is to help schools and help kids stay in school and maintain a number of aspects of health.
So just to be clear, just for a follow-up, so you do not have to be vaccinated to be eligible for this policy, right? Is that the case?
That is correct. So this is intended particularly for unvaccinated in the sense that if you're vaccinated, your risk is much lower already. So, this is something that applies to unvaccinated students and staff.
So then can you explain if, parents at home, they're not necessarily public health professionals. I mean, they can monitor their kids for symptoms, but how is this going to be a screening on a daily basis for 14 days by a school nurse? Is that how this is going to work? Or?
We're going to keep this simple for families. They have to make an assessment with the school where the school will let them know, especially on that day one, do they have any of these symptoms, okay? And then after that, there will be reminders to be able to continue to report on that from the family's side of things. The other thing to remember is there is guidance that different schools already have out there of how to manage an exposure. You can quarantine for 10 days. You can test at day 5 to get a sense, because that's when we know you're most likely to turn positive if you're going to turn positive based on a test. That still applies. So that is still going to be the case. And again, a reminder, for schools that don't want to go down this road, they don't have to. This is optional. This is a choice. If a school district says, we want to do screen and stay, we're making it available to you as something that you can do, as a way to balance all the health risks that students face.
Commissioner, this is a question for both you and the governor. Has the administration begin to have a discussion about what would be the standard, what would be the metric in vaccination, positivity rate, and so forth before the mandate on mask wearing goes away?
Start, I'll follow up.
Okay. I think this is our first step in this off-ramp in this pandemic. Okay, we have a lot of unknown factors right now. We're looking to see our 5 to 11-year-olds that can get vaccinated. I see a lot of people very excited about that. I'm out there every day trying to address people's concerns that they have for their own children. We need to see that group getting vaccinated. While that's happening, this is our first move in that off-ramp, and to decide how is this all going to play out as we're trying to emerge from this pandemic. And so we have additional measures that need to happen. I don't have a strict number that I can give you to be able to answer that question right now, but what I want you to know is that we are all committed to being able to move in this direction. And if anything, I hope that this move gives you some confidence and faith that our goal is to return to normalcy, and we will have to do it one step at a time.
What would I make? Can we hear from the governor on that one?
Sure, I can stand on that. Standing tall for Connecticut, I love it. I think we're getting closer to that day, Paz. And as Manisha said, this is one more step. What I think about the question is, our kids are still wearing masks in schools, and when do we leave that up to the local jurisdiction? Look, we've got Thanksgiving coming up. That's a period of time where a lot of people are traveling, moving around. A year ago, I was more nervous about that. Places like Florida had very high vaccination rates, people coming and going. A little less worried about that now. So I think the two big benchmarks I see coming forward is A, making sure your younger brothers and sisters get vaccinated at the same rate each and every one of you have. And then we got Thanksgiving and Christmas. And if we still maintain our low community spread, like Connecticut's been a leader over the last 6 months or so, I think we'll be able to announce some changes. We're not there yet.
Why not require testing?
Before February 15th, before your executive power runs out, do you make that decision? Is there also a political calculus to be made?
I don't know about the political calculus. I'm going to look at what the community spread is, see whether we got through Thanksgiving well, see whether their older brothers and sisters are vaccinated, and we'll make a decision December, January. February 15th is not in my, radar screen.
What would you say to Republican lawmakers who right now are saying they want to see fewer protocols today?
I think they wanted to see fewer protocols for the last year and a half, the emergency over, let's go. And I've erred on the side of caution. I appreciate that, but I'm really proud of Connecticut. I think we've done well. I think we've got our society open. We got our schools open. We got people going back to work. And I know how tired people are of these protocols, and they are coming to an end. Give us a little more time so we can keep your kids safe.
Why aren't tests? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna ask about testing.
Yeah,
so go ahead.
Why isn't testing part of this protocol? If you've been exposed and you're not showing symptoms, maybe you're asymptomatic, and you could come in and you could spread, and a school could end up quarantined. So why isn't testing, mandatory testing, part of this screen and stay policy?
Well, I'll start, and then Manisha can save me. But I can tell you there's a lot of testing going on at our schools. They're using that, at their own discretion. Some schools and teachers, find it really cumbersome to do, a little expensive to do on a daily basis, the entire middle school. So we're giving them a little bit of discretion there. This is a lot easier to monitor. If you're showing symptoms, don't show up. Otherwise, you're in school. Manisha?
So just as a follow-up to that, there are states around the country that are doing test and stay. And when we started to explore this idea, we evaluated all the different protocols that are out there. The few things to note is test and stay is extremely costly. It is very intensive and cumbersome on the part of the schools. There is a very limited supply of those rapid tests that you need to be able to do that. You need to have certain certification in your school to be able to even perform that kind of laboratory testing. And when we looked at going down that line, it was going to take a couple months for that to happen. And what we wanted to do was be able to vaccinate our kids. Again, if you're vaccinated, there's less of a need for that. The testing is really important, particularly for the unvaccinated. And that the amount of time it was going to be able to do to be able to do test and stay versus take a low risk calculation and provide immediate relief while we get the rest of our population vaccinated. And we are number one in the country in terms of vaccinated people out of the number of eligible people who are eligible for vaccines. If we can do the same thing in our younger children, we are going to be closer and closer to that off-ramp from this pandemic and getting life returned to some normalcy. So we thought about it a lot. I want to just make another plug for something that we do have called Project COVID Detect. This is a program that is being run through DPH. Schools can choose to participate. If they do, students that consent to participate, whose parents consent, can have weekly testing, weekly COVID testing. This is something that we've gone around the state and encouraged schools to participate. So Project COVID Detect, along with Screen and Stay, is a way that you can move forward having a little bit of both. Again, the guidance of if you are a contact and you get tested at day 5 and to get a sense of whether you were exposed still applies. So that does not go away. It's just not testing every single day.
Do you have any numbers on the COVID Detect program? How many schools are participating? How many students?
Yeah, so right now we have 37 schools that are in that program, and we have a variety of, it's kind of rolling admission in terms of consent forms and things like that, so that's a harder number to give you. But we have schools that, you know, express interest at various different times.
Well, the low participation in that, was that a contributing factor in your decision not to add testing to the screening?
No, not actually. No, it wasn't. I mean, I think that the participation, first of all, in that, you know, I think there are a lot of things being asked of schools right now. Okay, so people are being asked to run protocols the way we are, being asked to vaccinate kids, being asked to doing testing, you know, doing quarantining. There are a lot of different things that schools are doing at any given time. And different schools have made the calculation for different reasons. And every day we get another school that says they might be interested. But that was not actually part of our decision making at all. The decision making had to do with the fact that this could provide temporary immediate relief in these next couple months until we get the rest of our population vaccinated up.
This young man has a question.
Yeah.
How do you plan on tracking the progress of this protocol?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I think what I would say is that we have ongoing surveillance of COVID tests and outbreaks that happen potentially in schools at any given time. So whenever there's a case, and especially if there's more than 1 or 2 cases, every week I see those cases. Every week I see where there may be a little cluster in a classroom or not. And then we dig in. And the team at DPH, this is not just me. I mean, I have an extensive team of 700 people who are working on protecting all of you every day. And they really dig into the details of where's their case, who might have been contacts, what was the circumstances around that. And that's going to be how we will figure out how we're doing on that. So thank you for that question. Yep.
Do you think this is going to improve the stigma against the unvaccinated people? Because it's very much so a negative connotation when you hear the term unvaccinated. So the idea of having screening, will that improve the idea of that even if you're unvaccinated, you'll still be able to be educated and have a normalcy in schooling?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a good point, and I think one thing I would just say is that I do understand that challenge. I would still say that getting vaccinated is the way that you're going to be able to actually stay safe and be able to participate in everything in your life, right? Because we're just talking about coming to school. If you want to go to a birthday party, if you get exposed somewhere else, you know, the virus is still out there. It's going to affect your life. And if you're not vaccinated, unfortunately, it affects your life in so many different ways. And you can't have a normal teenage life with that, right? So I think that our goal here really is to try to keep kids in school, whatever the hesitation may be there, and try to bring people along, actually, you know, and say that, you know, if you have more questions, if there are other things that you want to be able to actually address in terms of why you or your parents might not want you vaccinated yet, well, let's talk about that and see if we can get you there, but we don't want you to not be educated either.
The governor, you know, some people may see this as contradictory because this is essentially a policy where, regardless of your vaccination status, as long as you're screened for symptoms, you can stay in the classroom. So then, why was there a need for a vaccine mandate for state workers, where essentially, as Dr. Giuliani was saying, they have these same multi-level precautions, they're wearing the masks. Do you see it as contradictory?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we had a lot of state workers who were forward-facing every day, including teachers and paras, you know, dealing with folks who are vaccinated or unvaccinated, or people with special conditions who can't be vaccinated. And I thought it was by far the safest thing for all of them to get vaccinated or the test-out option. You know, here for our schools, I think we've done a pretty good job as a state keeping our schools open and keeping our schools open safely and giving parents and teachers and students the confidence that they can go into the school. This is one more step in the right direction.
Would you recommend the same strategy? Why couldn't they deploy this in a very similar way if their workers are vaccinated and they're wearing a mask?
Oh, I see. Well, first of all, the federal government today, ironically, I think, came out with their OSHA regulations as regards you know, companies with 100 or more, you know, folks out there. Look, I think in close quarters and some of these, you know, I can understand why the federal government wanted to err on the side of caution and do what they did. We're doing what we're doing in our schools.
And just last question, this is actually goes to what you were just saying. This is for a colleague of mine who's doing a similar story. But in regards to the Biden January 4th deadline for the vaccines for companies, do you see that at all here in Connecticut exacerbating the labor crisis?
I thought we weren't going to get teachers vaccinated. Then I didn't think we were going to get school bus drivers vaccinated. Then I was worried that, state employees were not going to get vaccinated. And I understand there's some hesitancy in, say, some of our major defense contractors where there's not even a test out option, as you know. You just have to get vaccinated. I've had some calls of concern about that, to be very blunt about it. And we've talked about that with the White House, but I think the White House firmly believes that these deadlines have incented more and more people to get vaccinated, and we're able to keep business going safely.
What do you believe?
I think that's probably true.
Governor, what is the economic impact of the screen and stay program?
I think the economic impact is, if you're a mom or dad, it's more likely that your kid's now going to be in the classroom, more likely that you don't have to be on and off when it comes to you going to work. I think it steadies the labor pool in a significant way.
So what happens if an unvaccinated student gets COVID and then goes through this program? Are there any other implications, or how does that work? Maybe that's a commitment.
Go ahead. There's a lot of conditions in there.
Could you repeat that question?
Yeah. So let's say that an unvaccinated student gets COVID and then goes through the screen and stay program. Is there any other requirements, and you can't make the student get vaccinated?
So an unvaccinated student who gets COVID would go home on isolation. They wouldn't be in school at all. So they wouldn't be eligible for screen and stay. They're not somebody who screen and stay applies to at all. The people who screen and stay applies to are the kids who were sitting around that kid who got COVID, the unvaccinated kid who got COVID. And those kids who were sitting around them in the classroom, if they were close, normally right now would go home. Instead, what we're saying is those kids who were sitting around the kid who had COVID, we'll screen them for symptoms and they can continue to come to school.
What will be the DPH orders regarding winter sports? Will, for example, basketball players have to wear masks when they're playing? What is the DPH going to direct?
So we're still working on that. Glenn and I've been in discussions, and we're talking about that with the governor, and that's still under discussion.
But the final decision under the governor's order is yours, is it not?
Well, that guidance will be shortly coming out.
Yes, but I'm just clarifying. No matter what the CIAC may say.
Oh, yes, yes.
They can adopt all sorts of rules. Bottom line is.
Yes, that's correct.
You have the final say.
That's correct.
Governor, can you talk a little bit about students who did have to quarantine last year? There were thousands of hours of classroom time that they did not get instruction. What's being done for them? And do we have any sense of how many kids were quarantined and how many hours were lost?
A lot less than most other states in the country. Because our schools were open. They were open either full-time or hybrid, and then they moved to full-time. That's part of, Jody, why we're doing this, because being at home does not work nearly as well as being with your friends and your teacher in place. What it's been doing for them, I should ask probably one of the teachers here, Charlene, in terms of what we're doing to help people catch up for anything they may have lost last year. Do you want that answer?
That'd be great.
Yeah.
No, but it is a great question because we're concerned about the lost learning that occurred. And the federal dollars that we got also emphasize the need for learning recovery that is happening locally at our districts that we're working with. And we're providing that support at the agency as well, using some of our federal dollars to help to support all of that enrichment opportunities for students. And our superintendents are doing a really great job as they're planning for using the investment of the resources that they've gotten to focus in on the work that they're doing for students to catch up, as you've said, which is really important. And maybe Maureen can add some context as to some specific things that they're doing, but we've seen some innovations in the applications that our districts have put in. And those, by the way, for ESSER 2 applications are all transparently posted online that are approved. So you can pull up a district and see the plans that have been approved for how they're utilizing those funds.
Does the State Department of Education track the students that are quarantined? Do you have any data on how many kids have to be quarantined?
No, we don't specifically have quarantine data. What we do have are the number of remote days that students are, because that's reported to us. So we have information for September that's actually going to be online pretty soon, in a day or two, about remote days. That would include quarantining. That would include if there were local outbreaks and kids have to go. It would also include whether we had, I think in one district, we had some bus drivers who had COVID, and so go into school via transportation. So it include all the numbers of kids there, but not specifically the quarantining numbers.
And is that just for September, or is that all throughout the pandemic?
That's for, we actually collected data all last year. All that information is online. We collected information by learning models, and so that information is there. And then for this year started, we're a little lag behind, but the one for September will be posted pretty soon.
I have a clarification question for Commissioner Jahani. You said, when you were speaking before, you said that the testing was for unvaccinated students. Is it for both vaccinated and unvaccinated students, or no?
Are you talking about Project COVID Detect, that testing, or which testing?
The screening program. Is it for both vaccinated and unvaccinated students?
You mean screen and stay?
Screen and stay. So if I'm a vaccinated student.
Right.
And I become a contact.
Right.
For somebody.
So right now, vaccinated students who would be identified as a contact can just go to school anyway and monitor symptoms. That's the way it works right now. An unvaccinated student would have to stay home. So the unvaccinated student is most, or partially vaccinated student, one who, maybe has had one shot. Those are the ones that would be most affected by this in terms of being able to stay in school.
So they can't participate, or they can participate?
They can participate. Any student, unvaccinated student can participate in this. That they would be eligible for this, absolutely.
So even before this program, parents of vaccinated students, were they notified? Were they doing this essentially already? They were notified of a close contact and told to monitor the symptoms?
Yes, that's how, the schools can tell me better, but that is the guidance. And so if you were a vaccinated student and you were a contact, you would be notified, but you could continue going to school. The unvaccinated students would have to stay home, or partially vaccinated students. So that's who this affects the most. Also, just as a clarification, when you had asked about how many schools were participating in Project COVID Detect, it's 37 school districts, if I didn't say that. So there are multiple schools within a district. Yes?
So you've talked about a lot about how this policy will affect classrooms. Will it also apply if we are exposed to someone with COVID during a sports practice or during a game?
Yeah, I know, and that's tougher. And so really this is mostly about in classroom. Okay, so, we need to take certain steps. Just to give a little bit more granularity to that, if you were in a school supervised athletic activity during the day, school day activity, PE class, something like that, and it's a short amount of time and it's supervised thing, that would be eligible for screen and stay, okay? If you are outdoors having lunch or having a mask break or something, that would be okay for screen and stay. And I know that a lot of those other things that you do in your normal life are the places where you could have the most contact. The problem is the schools are the place we have the most control over. And that's why we're really focusing on what's happening in the schools and what exposure you would have in the schools. And that's part of the reason why students have been so safe, is because what's happening in the schools, all these terrific educators know how to do it well, and students listen when their educators tell them what to do. So, I think for the example that you're talking about, that's a little bit trickier.
Do we know that schools are applying consistent policies, though, that, you're saying this policy right now, applies to students who are vaccinated? I'm being told by parents that, even the vaccinated kids who are contacts are being told to
Stay at home. We can reiterate and reemphasize and redistribute and work with our partners for guidance that's been out there and is out there and can be looked at to be able to make sure that they are being followed. That's the best I can do.
That's going to be it for On Topic. I think we have a student question here.
There's also
Thank you.
another student
Let me ask her then, if you don't mind, since you already asked one. Yeah, go ahead.
So with the screening process, if we have like common cold symptoms, how would that work with the new screening process?
Yeah, so, I think it's tough because common cold symptoms are also COVID symptoms, right? So I'll just give you, frankly, a personal example. My son had a sore throat and congestion, and I kept him home and sent him for a COVID test. And he was negative. He was vaccinated, but he was negative. But that's really the easiest way to know that you don't have COVID and can then go back to school, right? So I think that, but if you've been a contact to somebody who had COVID, for 14 days, if you develop those symptoms, it's still more likely that it's COVID versus one of the other viruses that's circulating. So, I think that really the easiest way, particularly in this winter season when we know that there are going to be other viruses going around, and like Governor Lamont said, get your flu shot. Flu causes this a lot, and our immunity to flu is way down because we didn't see it much last year, right? There were hardly any. And so I would anticipate that we will see more this year. All the masking is helping. But, I think there are a bunch of viruses that we have at this time. So that's what I would suggest. Okay? I think we need to wrap it up.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just want to thank all of our guests, Governor Lamont and his team, all our representatives from the State Department of Ed and CAPS and CAS and all the alphabets that are here today. I was reminded by the Commissioner that Addendum 5 will give you a lot of the backdrop on our existing protocols, and the protocols regarding screen and stay are forthcoming this week. And it will include a checklist for parents, so it's going to be real easy for them to know if their child has any symptoms. And I want to thank our students who asked some amazing questions. So with that, I will close this out, and thank you all for coming.